Hi Bother Brigade, here's what's bothering me today. It's finally time. We're doing yet another video about the specifically Ottawa trucker convoy, the Freedom Convoy, right? Because their freedom has been so impacted, and we're not even going to get into the fact that conservatives can no longer distinguish between freedom and privilege, both in this country and south of the border, by the way. That's going to be a subject for a different time. Instead, we're going through a whole bunch of new stuff that has been happening. If you want to catch up into a bit more background and stuff, I have several videos on this, which I'll probably just link down below. But basically, we're going to go into all the ways in which this Freedom Convoy is actually anything but. And I guarantee you the story is incredibly wild. In fact, it is so wild that you're going to probably sit back and think, I can't actually believe that this is real life. But unfortunately, it is. So first off, let's start with the whole Freedom Convoy, right? They are protesting because of vaccine mandates being introduced for truckers on both sides of the border, by the way. And they are saying that, you know what, no, we're not gonna leave Ottawa and other cities until the vaccine mandates are lifted. Even though, again, see other videos, 90% of truckers are vaccinated, and it's a mutual requirement for being vaccinated so you can cross over the border, right? And we're going to come back to that later, but that's just sort of the core gist of what they're mad about. And, you know, their freedom has been impacted that way. So a bunch of trucks and pickup trucks and tractor trailers, etc., all started in a totally grassroots way, getting a bunch of money for a GoFundMe, and they started these convoys, multiple convoys actually, rolling from west to east and east to west, all converging on Ottawa, and now they've gone on to a few other Canadian cities like Toronto and Vancouver and Quebec City, right? And yeah, so let's see. The results in Ottawa, as I've shown before, have been pretty distasteful and absolutely terrible. But again, it's about freedom, right? That's why the protest has people afraid to leave their homes, businesses afraid to open, people being assaulted and threatened. That is fascism, not freedom. But you know, it's such a peaceful protest. Like, they have bouncy castles. It's totally not fascism at all, which is why the peaceful protest they have to shut down half of Ottawa to protect citizens from. But it's peaceful, it's fine, it's a party. The bouncy castles in no way are being used as a fascist way to, you know, show that, look, see, we're defending children and our children's future. Please ignore the fact that this is basically trying to distract from all the various stories of abuse, which I'm definitely gonna get into. And please don't pay attention to the fact that this also means we're essentially using children as potential human shields to drum up sympathy if and when this eventually comes to violence. Which is what they want, by the way, but moving on. But you know, they're fighting for all of our freedom, right? And they're really thoughtful people. It's official, my father's surgery has been canceled, meaning he'll be in severe pain and with decreased mobility for the foreseeable future. Tomorrow, I'll walk to work in plain clothes so that I'm not harassed for being a healthcare worker. But your freedom is being infringed upon. Yeah, we're gonna come back to that healthcare worker one in a hot second. We're just still going through the whole BS, it's about freedom nonsense. I do not stand with the freedom fighters or truckers blocking the border. You want to participate in society but not do the things that protect society? Whose freedom are you fighting for? If you walk beside racists, you are a racist. Freedom for all Canadians includes protecting our most vulnerable. You're tantruming for your privilege, not fighting against oppression. I mean, yeah, she's absolutely right. And there are lots of people who have done really great summations about how absolutely BS and terrible the Freedom Convoy actually is when you look at the bigger picture. From the Toronto protest, imagine holding patients, hospitals, and healthcare workers hostage and calling yourself a freedom fighter. Yeah, it's about freedom, which is why people are scared. They don't want to leave their homes, and you're shutting down borders and the economy. We're all going to come back to that in like several hot seconds. It's about freedom, and you know, we refuse to live in fear, which is why we're so deadly afraid of getting a fucking needle for this country that they pretend to care about. If your Freedom Convoy means that healthcare workers need to hide, LGBTQ2SIA folk are harassed, BIPOC people are scared, Indigenous people don't feel safe, and vulnerable residents walk in fear, then it's not about freedom, it's about entitlement and supremacy. And oh yeah, we're gonna come back to like all these things. We're going on a journey here, folks. A very grim, dark journey into the absolute BS that is the Freedom Convoy, currently in Ottawa and several other Canadian cities. If you can afford to travel across the country taking weeks off work while literally building saunas in the street, you aren't oppressed and are very much free. Oh yeah, these people have been building saunas recently because, you know, they're so oppressed, right? Which is why there's the bouncy castles, right? We're fighting for freedom, which is why there's bouncy castles that haven't been taken down. And, you know, we're having like impromptu dance parties in the street. And again, this is all clearly managed to craft a sort of, look, see, it's peaceful. It's just people having fun. Please ignore the myriad of stories of all abuse and harassment, etc., that unfortunately it is now time for. On January 30th, a local of Ottawa decided to go out and get the lay of the land. I went downtown late yesterday afternoon to get the lay of the land. Here's what I saw with the Trux Klan in the city. This is an attempt to frighten people. They were loud and harassing people on the sidewalks and in their cars. It was a display of letting us know they are here and can be violent at any time. A lot of the women, non-participants, walking alone on the sidewalks looked terrified. This was echoed by my pals living in the area. They felt too unsafe to venture out. The signs were racist garbage. Lots of people were complaining about immigrants coming through our open borders. Saw a few give Nazi salutes to each other as they passed on the sidewalk. One guy quipped he would hug another, but he was COVID positive. He was not wearing a mask. Of fucking course not. They were loud and abusive on the LRT, both to and from downtown, openly hostile and not wearing masks. Store/restaurant workers looked scared to serve them. I passed one place off Bank where the entire restaurant was packed with them. The employees behind the counter looked like they were at their wits' end. One woman, a member of the convoy, pulled her young daughter close and told her to always stay by her side. The kid looked frightened. The mom obviously didn't trust the men she was walking around with. The pure cacophony of noise was what I imagined hell would sound like. Jeering protesters, loudspeakers, non-stop honks, fireworks exploding. I can't imagine what it must be like for residents who are sensitive to noise being subjected to that for hours on end. They stormed the Rito Center just as I was leaving. They also burst into a soup kitchen and demanded they be given food meant for the homeless. I don't know how the police maintain there hasn't been violence when they are being aggressively hostile. So intimidation is not violence, it is intimidation. Still really concerning. And before people think, oh, well, that's a one-off, again, see my previous videos talking about various similar incidences throughout the downtown corroborated by several different sources, including eyewitnesses. And then again, there's also this one. Just came back from a walkthrough with a friend from the Ottawa truck convoy. About 10 minutes into our walk, we were yelled at and physically threatened just for wearing our masks. The streets are bare and trucks are parked everywhere, even in the middle of the road. And it's a whole little thread, but it like veers off into other territory of stuff. I'm just trying to focus on the kind of what's been happening and the harassment, abuse, and in some cases assault that has been happening to the innocent people of Ottawa while these people have gone in and are still showing, look, see, it's a peaceful protest, and really it's not at all. What you are looking at is an LGBT-friendly business known as Happy Goat Coffee Company having been vandalized by members of the convoy. But it's about freedom and totally not hateful at all. See also a previous video about the other problems with certain flags. And you know, they really care about people's freedom and how the people of Ottawa should be free now, rising up in celebration, which is why this happened. On February 4th, courtesy of Mushu Ice Cream, we are closing early tonight, Friday, at 6:30 p.m. and staying closed over the weekend until Wednesday, February 9th, fingers crossed. One of our staff was physically assaulted on their way to work today, blocked on the sidewalk by two men and shoved to the ground for wearing a mask. Based on the accounts we've heard from our neighbors, this behavior is not an isolated incident. It's taken the day for us to let it sink how not okay we are. Please pardon the last minute change, and we're sorry if you braved a trek to support us to find us unexpectedly closed. But you know, they're about freedom because they, like us, are just so tired of the pandemic, right? And we want to get back to normal, and we got to open up the borders and open things up again. We got to get the economy going, which is why they've been blockading different border crossings, most notably in Coutts, Alberta. And also recently I heard something going on in like the bridge in Windsor, Ontario, down at the southern tip there. So, Yeah, they really care about the economy and businesses and getting back to normal. And it's about freedom, which is why they're harassing people minding their own goddamn business on the way to work. Take a motto from your own fucking version of the libertarian flag and mind your damn business. And you know, as I pointed out in several of the other videos, right? Yeah, there's a few bad apples. In fact, the entire goddamn barrel is rotten at this point, right? If you don't want to stand behind the truckers, that's fine. Feel free to stand in front of them. It's not like numerous protesters in the States have been killed by people running them over. And it's not like Republican legislatures aren't making it so that that's actually legally allowed. They're making the threat explicit. This was one local's response to my post about GoFundMe canceling their fundraiser in my local Facebook forum, and I've seen it elsewhere. Many of these same people said all lives splatter to Indigenous and BLM protests. But it's about freedom, right? And there's only a few bad apples, which is why we have all these stories here and all the stories in other videos. And unfortunately, the arguably grotesque and very dangerous and concerning cherry on top was the following story from February 6th. I've been hesitating to post this publicly, but I feel I must for the safety of downtown Ottawa residents. Here are the facts. Last night, 2 arsonists brought a full package of fire starter bricks into our building's lobby at 5 a.m. The building is located at Metcalf and Lisgar. We were able to see the building's video footage of the event. These 2 men got into the lobby and began lighting the full package. The building is old and has wood paneling on the walls. It is also located at the epicenter of the Convoy protests in Ottawa's core. One of them taped up the door handles so no one could get in or out. This is the most insidious part of the experience beside the lighting of the fire. After a night of blaring horns and fireworks until 4 a.m., some residents had yelled and pleaded with protesters outside to stop. As the fire was being lit, a tenant walked by and nervously asked who they were. One admitted being part of the Convoy protests. The tenant quickly got into the elevator and arsonists continued to ignite the package. Once lit, it grew and nearly touched the wood panel walls. The arsonists escaped out the side door as video shows the fire growing. After speaking with many residents, it became clear that certain protesters outside became very aggressive and angry at the tenants in the hours leading up to the arson. Not all protesters, but a few screamed and were clearly upset by the confrontation earlier in the night. A good Samaritan was walking by the door outside and saw the fire. Luckily, the door opened after some struggle with the taped handles. He got in and was able to extinguish the flames. It is clear to us, as residents, that this was a blatant reprisal by protesters. Not only have they subjected Ottawa residents to widespread harassment, assault, and aggression, but now an attempt to light an entire building on fire. Our hope is that the Ottawa Police and Jim Watson will heed Catherine McKinney's calls for an immediate and firm resolution to the Convoy's occupation. This incident could have ended much, much worse. What the fuck? It's about freedom, and look, see the bouncy cows, and we're just having parties, and like, it's saunas, it's all just good vibes, man. It's not dangerous at all. Fuck off. Absolutely fuck off anyone who's defending this at this point. People try to light a building on fire and try and trap people inside. That is not peaceful. That is not anything about freedom. That is reprisal and fascism. And for a while, media was kind of silent, which is why some people were rather rightfully saying things like, I kind of feel like the fact that 2 men who are likely participants in the Ottawa occupation attempted to mass murder an apartment building of people by setting it on fire and locking them inside should be getting a lot more media attention, but I'm no news editor. Yeah, like actually so messed up. And again, right, we had like stories about paramedics being targeted. So these people are not here for freedom. They are here to be hateful, spiteful, terrible people who are desperate, as we've pointed out in one of the previous videos that, again, will be linked down below. And so we've already, like, at the start of this, talked about why these people are here, at least ostensibly. Again, we're going to get into that, but again, a sort of summation of all that's happened so far is pretty telling in terms of how terrible the convoy is. Freedom Convoy list of accomplishments. Actual crimes: defaced Terry Fox statue, danced on tomb of unknown soldier, parked on Cenotaph War Memorial, defaced war statues, climbed on War Memorial, peed on War Memorial, stole from homeless, assaulted, demanded, stole food from homeless shelter, assaulted, fights in Rideau Center with store clerks, accosting LRT masked riders as per the local rules. peed and pooped in many downtown public places, despite being provided porta potties from the city, which has never been done before for any Black, Indigenous, Pride, or other protest in history, by the way. Public intoxication, fighting, assaulting police and residents, throwing beer cans at media or anyone with a camera, uttering threats, and then they have related to crimes, which is the one about facilitating the death of one individual. That was proven to be fake news. But what's not fake news is costing the city of Ottawa, which is not the seat of power for mandates, it's Toronto, provincial government mandates, by the way, $800,000 a day in policing. They also shut down the Rideau Centre, and they shut down the entire city LCBO network. The LCBO is the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. That is where you tend to buy your wine and spirits and stuff like that. The beer store is where you buy your beer. They also share a list of all the bylaws suspended for protesters, which again has been unprecedented in any other protest to date. So this is just like a whole bunch of stuff over the past week, and sadly, folks, we're not done yet. Again, back on January 31st, when a lot of this stuff was getting started, there was a really gross revelation. Ottawa City Councillor on radio now says a protester defecated on the front steps of a couple's home after yelling at the couple for flying the rainbow flag in their window. And in case you're wondering, yes, there's evidence. Thankfully, it's blurred here, but as they point out, one of our members in Catherine McKinney's ward had rocks and snowballs thrown at her windows because she had a pride flag hung up. A protester also defecated on her fire escape and threw human feces against the wall. Why is this disgusting harassment allowed? Because the police aren't here to protect you, and they definitely kind of agree with the protesters. It's why y'all should defund the police. This is all related to Ottawa, right? Now it's time we talk at least tangentially about some of the other protests that have been happening. Most notably the other big one in Ontario, which is the one that happened in Toronto. Remember how at the start I said we'd come back to nurses and, having to be protected and hide from the freedom-loving protesters, right? This is the part where we talk about that. The convoy that was headed to Toronto, they wanted to get right around Queen's Park, which is the area that hosts the legislature of this province. In the area is what's known as Hospital Row. So there's a lot of hospitals, lots of healthcare workers around. And that's why, in the interest of protecting the safety of healthcare workers, the following became revealed to the just so frustrated and tired people of Toronto. Unreal. In advance of convoy protests this weekend, health workers in Toronto are being asked not to wear clothes that may identify them as health workers. They used to clap and bang pots for us. How do we get to a place where health workers must hide in public just to be safe? Not even kidding, it was in a memorandum. You can see it right here. Out of an abundance of caution, Toronto Police Services suggests you not wear clothing which might identify you as a hospital worker on your way to and from work. Which, as someone rightfully points out, police escort to work. This is nuts. Speechless. And somewhat dryly and humorously, but yet showing just how absolutely bonkers the situation has gotten. Who'd have guessed that in 2022 it'd be safer to be a Nazi in public than a healthcare worker? And so I guess it's time we kind of start diving a little bit deeper, right? I've just shown you a bunch of different examples and linked to previous examples showing that this is not a few bad apples. The barrel is rotten to the goddamn core, and we are going to come back to that, specifically some of the leaders and organizers and the funding for the GoFundMe and a whole bunch of other things. But given all this stuff and all this terrible information, I want to point out that there's several people who have come to certain observations about the current situation. Just thinking of all these conservatives who would have our heads for coming near a railway are now really silent about a bunch of rednecks blocking the border. Guess fucking with capitalism is all right if you're white. Yeah, that certainly seems to be the case, which is why people need to shut up about, oh, white privilege isn't a thing. It so clearly is. We have a mountain of evidence thanks to these convoy protests. Also, on the subject of these people basically being fascists because everyone's being very frustrated by the terrible government mismanagement, and yeah, we should all feel frustrated by that. But it's all kind of summed up in this Facebook post that someone linked. At my boiling point, I have had enough along with everybody else. I have followed the rules and I am tired of this dystopian nightmare. So yes, I will support anything that could lead to the end of this, and if that makes me a Nazi sympathizer, then fine. So, you know, there are people who are literally so exasperated that they're willing to turn to goddamn literal fascism if it means getting out of this, rather than waking up and realizing, wow, the current system is untenable, we need to hold the capitalist class and the governments that are in their back pockets to account. Instead, it's about just lift the mandates, as if that's not going to lead to further problems and complications down the line. But you know, I don't exactly expect these people to make a lot of sense and have a lot of logical consistency. As propaganda very rightfully points out here, honkies, these strict lockdowns are ruining the economy, vaccine mandates are breaking the supply chain, and medical tyranny now. Also honkies, we're shutting down the border to stop the flow of goods in and out of the country and cripple the economy. Very smart people we're dealing with here, folks. Surely by now, lots of people have probably seen all the various different people supporting this protest, whether they're bot accounts or not, saying, you know, they're just mad that this is the working class rising up, ha ha ha. So let's actually talk about that real quick. How working class is this protest, or rather the multitude of protests happening? Spoiler alert, not very. What kind of working class people can afford to not work for several days while buying diesel to fill huge trucks they burn off through idling in an economy where 60% of families struggle to afford enough groceries and 50% of them live check to check? Well, as she touches on, and as many others have kind of come to the rather correct realization, the trucker convoy is not a workers' revolt. The trucker convoy is a revolt of petit bourgeoisie owner-operators, financially backed by wealthy right-wing grifters, not the vast majority of exploited trucking workers. Which again, I will remind people to watch my video about supporting the actual truckers who are struggling in the industry, which are the Brampton truckers who have had their wages stolen. The extent to which this convoy is actually about trucking or truckers is debatable. The network of far-right wealthy organizers and donors backing the convoy certainly calls claims of authentic connection to working-class truckers into question. The convoy's two principal organizers are known figures of Canada's far right. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network draws a range of further connections between the convoy and far-right, racist, and xenophobic extremists. Trust me, we are gonna get to that. It's safe to assume that the people who made the trek to Ottawa aren't the same people filing labor violation claims with the federal labor program. Rather than exploited workers in a deregulated industry, my guess is that the truckers actually present in Ottawa were by and large self-employed owner-operators, the small contingent of wealthier small proprietors who have made out quite well in the new Wild West of for-hire trucking. It was a revolt of the petit bourgeoisie financially backed by wealthy right-wing grifters. This weekend's idiotic pageantry was thus a political consequence of the decades-long class project to remake the trucking sector, a project which has dismantled a highly unionized industry formerly made up of relatively well-paying and stable jobs and replaced it with a poorly regulated labor market of hyper-competition among small owner-operators and other precariously positioned workers. Yeah, so you know, the people who can afford to take all this time off and rent all this equipment and buy all the diesel and just afford to idle it, yeah, not exactly the working class, or again, the 90% of truckers who are vaccinated and still keeping supplies going throughout this country. Those are the truckers we should be supporting, not these jackasses. And by the way, it gets so much worse. Turns out a lot of the funding came from American donors, specifically, of course, right-wing ones. Startling Trump interference points to GoFundMe convoy campaign manipulation. It's a long article, goes into like a whole bunch of different stuff, but to broadly summarize, it pointed out how the sheer level of support that it garnered and a lot of the anonymous donations of like multiple thousands of dollars and like fake names being used, etc. and aliases, like people were making thousands of dollars donations using the name Justin Trudeau and Theresa Tam. Theresa Tam, by the way, is the like chief medical officer of health, if you want to call her that, in Canada. And someone did the math and basically showed that that was fundamentally impossible as a grassroots Canadian campaign based on previous super successful Canadian campaigns. So something was amiss. And so when GoFundMe decided, okay, you know what, based on like all the reports we're hearing from police and other people, it seems like things have gotten very dangerous and violent. So, you know, there you have the $1 million for like gas and food and supplies and stuff like that. The rest, we're canceling it, we're shutting it down, we're issuing the refunds, right? Turns out a bunch of Republicans in the States suddenly got very upset about this, and they even just went completely mask off about it. The lady who wrote that article that I just mentioned had the following tweet and observation. So I did a deep dive and tons of research to show that GoFundMe was basically faked and a US op, and then they just come out and say it. The person in question coming out and saying it is the Attorney Goddamn General of Texas. Attorney General Ken Paxton. Patriotic Texans donated to Canadian truckers' worthy cause using GoFundMe. This BLM backing company went woke, froze the funds, and failed to deliver Texans money. Today, I assembled a team to investigate their potential fraud and deception. Texas donors will get justice. Mind your damn business. Don't try and fund shitty, terrible right-wing insurrections in the, heartland of your closest political ally and literal next door neighbor, you absolute fucking terrible ghoul. But hey, he just kind of admitted it. Hey, lots of Texans just donated money to try and overthrow the government, basically. And we are going to get into that. But this dude is just openly admitting hey, no, we tried to, have an ivermectin insurrection in Canada. Come on now. Hell, even Ron DeSantis is getting in on this bullshit. DeSantis to investigate GoFundMe for withholding money from anti-vax Canadian trucker protest. Totally not obvious that these people are really mad that funding was pulled for their attempted insurrection and overthrowing of a democratically elected government in their closest next door ally, right? It is so clear that right now with Republicans, no one is safe, not even your closest allies, not Britain, not Canada, no one is safe from these assholes. Hell, even a senator who, by the way, senators in Canada are unelected, even one of them had a really good point, and I hate that I'm having to use an unelected person in Canada as a good point. As a senator and patriotic, polite Canadian, I hope you won't mind if I point out we are a sovereign nation with a democratically elected government, and that the idea of American dollars funding a group that seeks to oust said government might raise some questions here. But again, right, this whole thing was orchestrated by the working class, which is why attorney generals in Texas and governors of Florida are being super mad that donations made by Americans to a Canadian grassroots organization that had numerous sketchy donations being donated to it is being understandably shut down, and people don't take kindly to the attempted overthrow of a democratic government. Someone sums it up so beautifully. So GoFundMe shut down the Convoy's money, and American politicians at basically all levels are now openly saying they want to be able to fund white supremacist uprisings on foreign soil, and somehow we're still debating if the Convoy is a working class protest or not. What? And another instance of this definitely not being working class is another instance from the Toronto protest. What you're looking at here seems to be really impressive, right? It's a whole fleet of John Deere tractors rolling into downtown. You see the CN Tower in the background. Oh boy, farmers getting in on this, clearly working class. But I hope people paid very close attention to some stickers in the windows. Somebody owns a JD dealership. All the window stickers are the same 50. Units are also way too clean. As someone who literally goes out to deliver packages in the country every day and still sees actual tractors and trucks and backhoes, etc., working out there all the time on, actual farms and stuff. Oh yeah, absolutely can confirm. Those things are way too clean. Also, lots of other people decided to hop into the replies of that and pointed out some very real and valid points. My dad was a trucker for years, never owned his own rig. My aunt worked a small farm for a guy that owned a couple of them. We're not seeing workers at these things, we're seeing business owners. Throw back to that article from however many minutes ago it was, pointing out that this is basically a revolt of the petite bourgeoisie, which someone else just, says the same thing. This is a revolt of the petite bourgeoisie. This is not the working class. It's the same class of folks the CIA recruited to topple Allende in Chile in 1973. Another great observation was the following. Actual farmers and truckers are still at work, which is why people haven't begun clamoring over empty stores. Meanwhile, these goons roll in with corpo-sponsored gear and enough dosh to camp out for weeks. Not sus at all. Yeah, which we've kind of already been over, but to really, hammer home the point here, Canada's Freedom Convoy is a front for a right-wing anti-worker agenda. The convoy has received plaudits from the likes of Elon Musk and Jordan Peterson, sympathetic coverage from conservative media, and acclaim from some Canadian members of Parliament. The Freedom Convoy's GoFundMe has thus far raised $10 million in donations. Despite this wide recognition and support, the convoy presents itself as a scrappy coalition of working people who, fed up with the hardship they have undergone, are now speaking truth to power. But a closer look at key Freedom Convoy participants reveal that many of the concerns of the protesters have little to do with workers' rights or labor issues within Canada's trucking industry. In fact, convoy organizers have previously harassed workers on the picket line and ignored calls for support from racialized truckers fighting against wage theft. So I guess this means we finally have to start talking about the organizers, and there are two main and rather infamous organizers that we're definitely going to focus on. The first is Tamara Lich. Who is Tamara Lich, the spark that lit the fire? Lich resigned from the Maverick Party this week to devote herself full-time to the Freedom Convoy protest. So this lady is the main organizer behind the GoFundMe. She kind of went dark after the first $1 million were taken, and it's gotten a little sus since then. Now, very quickly, the Maverick Party is a party that advocates for not only Albertan independence, but just general Western Canadian independence. Which is why the idea of these people waving Canadian flags is just like, okay, but like the people you're supporting want to leave Canada. In fact, Tamara Lich at one point actually wanted Alberta to separate, join the United States as the 51st state so that she could have Trump as her president. But you know, this is about freedom, right? And it was just a few bad apples at the protest in Ottawa and at the various other protests. It's, you know, we're all tired of things and there's no ulterior motives here, which is why American Republicans are making a big stink over refunded donations so they can't fund a little insurrection in their closest ally's capital. The next person we unfortunately need to talk about is Pat King. And so, you know, I'm just gonna let the man speak horrendously for himself, but trigger warning and content warning for white supremacy, racism, and anti-Semitism because of fucking course.
You got another thing coming. I have a record the size of my fucking arm. I am not a nice person, and I know what's coming, and I know what I'm getting prepared for. And I'll tell you right now, not a single person out there who's fucking going to be able to stand up to what's coming. I guarantee it. And I guarantee it, each and every one of you are going to run like little bitches. Yeah, I said little bitches. Because I've had just about enough. All you little fucking pukes. Giver. Can't wait to watch you cower. And fucking run in shame. Run scared. I got pepper sprayed. I got rubber bullet in. You have no idea what's coming. Rubber bullets and pepper spray are fuck all. Wait till the real bullets start flying. And then we'll see where you're at. To the rest of everybody else, I love yous. Thanks for all your support.
This comment is absurd. It's like the people that are defending Pat King have no idea who he is. Not only is he a white supremacist, he's incredibly racist, and this is long established. Anyways, trigger warning.
What I am is a patriot who loves my country and doesn't want to see my culture be destroyed. Because our culture is 100% hardworking, honorable Anglo-Saxon, unless you want to change your national language to Chinese or Mandarin or Hebrew. You might want to change your name to Ishmael, or drop a bunch of change down the stairs and call yourself Chuan Ching Ching Chang. And that's what the goal is to depopulate the Anglo-Saxon race. Because they are the ones with the strongest bloodlines. We're going to have to take up arms, we're going to have to get violent, and we're going to have to oust this government. They've basically taken over the trucking industry.
Seems like a totally stand-up dude, right? And just in case the point wasn't hammered completely home, here he is literally laughing at the fact that people in downtown Ottawa haven't slept for 10 days.
Somebody wants to know what if they honk.
If you honk and there's police around you, you will get arrested. Take the arrest. Take the ticket. Do what you gotta do peacefully. Remember, these people haven't been able to sleep for 10 days. Okay? It's kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty hilarious. So now, you've got the citizens of Ottawa are requesting the municipality of Ottawa to put in an injunction to stop the horns, and now they put an injunction in there, and now they're asking for the feds to come and negotiate and get us out of their city. It's working. It's working beautiful. It's awesome, guys. So, yeah, I'm not laughing, you're laughing. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny how we can hug and laugh and have a good time. and things were working.
But it's not malicious at all. It's about freedom, and like, we're sympathetic, right? Yeah, they're so sympathetic. Their main guy and people all in the chat and his wife or whoever are all just laughing at tormenting people for days. But also, notice how at the end there, when he's saying, it's working, we're gonna come back to that very, very soon. But before we do that, I want to point out just how much of a fucking hypocrite this white supremacist piece of trash is. Here he is several years ago talking about the indigenous railway blockades, and notice how basically it's like, when we do it, it's fine. When people I don't like do it, they need to die.
Now we've got paid protesters shutting down trains. You've got the Mohawk. These people are being led to believe something that isn't true. These people are being misinformed. And now they're hurting Canadian industry, Canadian infrastructure, Canadian goods and services getting to market. They are basically trying to handcuff us. Now, if you took a group of yellow vest people and they all went out and they went to stand on those tracks and do it, we'd be shot with rubber bullets and arrested immediately. These people aren't even touched. So what does this say? What is this giving you a sign or like some kind of glimpse of what it is? These people are untouchable. You've got a government that is standing behind them, saying that civil disobedience is just, it's warranted.
So yeah, these are the two main organizers, a pro-Alberta and Western Canadian separatist, and a literal goddamn white supremacist. Great stuff here, totally not sus at all. But again, I want to talk on what he said in sort of that second last video about, it's working, they're sending people to try and negotiate, because they have a list of demands, right? There's the whole end vaccine mandates, which on the surface, right, is monstrously stupid and shows a stunning lack of awareness of how these people show some kind of understanding of the world around them, which is that they don't understand it at all. If you wanted to protest the vaccine mandates, you have to go to the provincial legislatures. The provincial legislature is in Toronto. Ottawa is the nation's capital. So, yeah, not really a good thing. So, why are they in Ottawa? What's the actual motive here beyond the ostensible cover of vaccine mandates bad, which they really aren't, by the way, in terms of trying to get over this, which, we all want, by the way? That is going to be the core of this next little segment. So let's go into what the convoy actually wants.
Let's address that, and then you can run off, and I'll continue to break down the MOU and demonstrate how it is an authoritarian attempt to overthrow a democratically elected government. This is from Canada Unity and their official demands, which includes Tamara Lich, who is one of the main original organizers. In the third paragraph of the first page, they define the Government of Canada as the Senate and the Governor-General, excluding the House of Commons. So the two branches of the federal government that are not elected, and excluding the one branch of government that is elected. They then outline that any government official unwilling to comply with the demands within the MOU must resign their lawful positions of authority immediately. Again, here they suggest that the accord is between the Senate and the Governor General. Both are not elected. And it does not include the House of Commons. It doesn't include the Liberal government. It doesn't even include the official opposition. But it does include unelected convoy members, an unelected Senate, and unelected Governor General. So you're not fighting for democracy. That's clear. The MOU then demands that the Senate and Governor General, federal entities, overrule provincial and municipal rulings. So you're advocating for the breaking of our Constitution. You can advocate for the upholding of the Charter and also advocate for breaking of the Constitution. Sections 91 and 92 define provinces as a separate jurisdiction to the federal government. So you're not demanding the protection of our Constitution. That much is clear. And finally, freedom fighters. If you're fighting for something that doesn't include the freedom of press and the ability of press to criticize you, especially to criticize you, you're not advocating for freedom. You're advocating for an authoritarian regime. Tell me you don't know what you're supporting without telling me you don't know what you're supporting. But we're the sheep. Bah!
So, real quick update here. The Memorandum of Understanding has since been retracted because I guess they saw that lots of people were realizing how absolutely bonkers it was. But they're still pushing for the undemocratic, just inference of themselves into the political sphere and arena. It's still really weird. So yeah, that's their Memorandum of Understanding, where basically they're calling for an undemocratic coup. And in case you think I'm crazy, there was also the news just from today, actually, which is why Governor General was trending on Twitter, where people were bombarding the Governor General's office with calls and emails, etc., basically about the following. This absolutely crackers letter has been spreading like wildfire on the Convoy Telegram channels. Supporters are apparently calling and emailing the Governor General en masse to demand a coup. Again, with the Memorandum of Understanding, we kind of already knew this, but again, there's this new one, just to, really solidify that these people are not good. They don't actually give a shit about freedom. They just want a coup, which is why they're in Ottawa. Feel free to pause it and read it at your own leisure, which is why we're only going on this for a few seconds at a time, because the entire thing is absolutely unhinged and shows a stunning lack of awareness of how the Canadian political system works. So that is the core and real reason why they're in Ottawa. They ultimately want a coup d'etat, which is why notorious white supremacist Pat King was so excited about, oh ho ho, it's working, because that's what he wants, right? He wants a coup d'etat that sees the undemocratically appointed people in Canadian government appointing an ad hoc committee, like a citizens committee, unelected they will be, by the way, to just completely circumvent the whole system, right? So yeah, it's about freedom, for sure. And you know what's really unfortunate about all this? Actual truckers doing the good work are already pissed off about this. They don't agree with it. Many of them are also, quite frankly, ashamed of what's happening. I'm a trucker. I'm pro-vaccine. These protests are making me ashamed to do my job. I head out today to do a trip to LA. I'm dreading it. I hate that my job makes me associated with this. And the Ontario Trucking Association, one of the biggest trucking associations in the country, is also very much firmly against this course of events. The vast majority of the Ontario trucking industry is vaccinated, and the overall vaccination rate among commercial drivers closely mirrors that of the general public. The Ontario Trucking Association does not support and strongly disapproves of any protests on public roadways, highways, and bridges. And honestly, it's so beautifully summed up by an actual trucker, like a real trucker, out there, nose to the grindstone, doing the work, keeping the system running.
Just because they don't want to get a vaccine, I just think it's ridiculous.
What would your message be to other truckers who are blocking your routes right now?
Stop it. You're making us look bad. I'm trying to do my job. You're making everybody look bad. Plain as I understand. You don't like the mandates. We're all frustrated. Everybody in this North America and the world is frustrated. It's got nothing to do with the government. Everybody has to pitch in and do this. It's not a Canadian thing. It's a world thing. I understand. Everybody's frustrated. I'm frustrated. I've worked right straight through this without time off. Stop it. You're not helping. You're just making more and more people mad at us.
It's ridiculous.
How come?
Well, we need to be vaccinated. You want to bring it back and forth over the borders? You want a job? Get vaccinated.
Amen, man. So unfortunately for the people of Ottawa, there's no way that the government can or should give in to these outrageous demands to overthrow democracy. So beyond the other avenues that we've talked about before about what can be done, there are some other things happening, because guess what? Ottawa, a city full of urban professionals and government workers, turns out one of the main ways that they're trying to fight back is litigation. So by partaking in an illegal occupation protest, does police understand that all those commercial vehicles are violating the terms of their liability insurance? Insurance carriers can deny claims / essentially jump off risk. Let's say one hits a pedestrian / building / blows up, and it's a whole long thread that goes into all the ways in which people could be liable and how this is an avenue for, targeting people and putting pressure on the protesters, or rather the insurrectionists, because a bunch of them actually want a coup, oh my fucking god. But this is how people are trying to fight back. Get the plate numbers of any truck in the Ottawa protest. Immediately suspend the plate and the commercial license of the owner or driver of the truck. Have the police deliver the notices of suspension and take the plates. This is an improper use of a motor vehicle. Hell, some people also have like better ideas than the OPS, of where apparently their idea was, let's do nothing and see if it works. Here's a rather brilliant idea. We can't stop trucks from entering the downtown core, says Ottawa Police Service. You could have checkpoints. You could check a commercial truck's manifest to verify they have a downtown delivery. If they don't, no entry. Seems simple. I mean, and again, other people are saying, look, you don't even need to necessarily tow the trucks. They don't have to tow. MTO needs to cancel certification, will make their liability insurance null and void. If the vehicle's leased, many are, it sets off a chain reaction of financial unraveling. They can fine and charge by mail out of province. Insurance carriers will finish the job. So, you know, people are doing things. There's also like that new $9.8 million lawsuit that has been issued on behalf of residents of Centretown. So yeah, typical Ottawa is like, time for the litigation, everybody. So, you know, there is hope for the people of Ottawa, but unfortunately they still have to deal with a monstrously difficult and terrible situation. The spectacular failure of the Ottawa Police Service, the abandonment by their provincial and federal government. It is absolutely terrible, and unfortunately, due to the desperation, now white supremacists and Alberta separatists are quote-unquote maybe getting what they want, which is a seat at the table to end the mandates, when really, as we've seen, their ultimate goal and a lot of the funding behind that was to try and orchestrate a coup and overthrow a democratically elected government of Canada with American participation. Between that and the various other videos that I had linked below and have already made, and between all the instances of, you know, just a few bad apples, which is why I was able to get like 24+ instances of that, that should show people that this freedom convoy is anything but. And yet, unfortunately, there's still a lot of people supporting this, thinking that it's fine, when it absolutely isn't. If you are supporting this, you are supporting white supremacists, Alberta separatists, and the worst elements of Canadian society who also want to overthrow a democratically elected government. This should not enjoy anyone's support, and the fact that it does is deeply disturbing, and that's what's bothering me today.